Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear isn't just an ancient story. It's a journey that will take you into the heart of one of the Bible's greatest mysteries, a revelation that will make you see the world in a completely new way. Have you ever wondered why a man, Isaiah, who lived more than 2,700 years ago, still speaks so loudly in our day? Why were his words quoted by Jesus Christ more than those of any other prophet? And why is the book that bears his name, for many, the most impactful of all Holy Scripture? I invite you to a deep dive into the life of a man chosen to see the future with chilling clarity. A man who, through divine visions, described events that would only materialize centuries later, with a precision that defies all human logic. You are about to discover the truth behind the prophet who dared to reveal a mother's virginity even before she conceived, who painted such a vivid portrait of the crucifixion that he seems to have been there, and who traced Messiah's most intimate biography long before he set foot on this earth. This is a powerful story, a message encoded for our generation, full of promises and warnings that are more relevant today than ever. The knowledge you will gain here is invaluable. And if this message touches your heart, if it makes you reflect and feel emotional, I ask you, leave your like here on this video and subscribe to the channel. This way, you help this message reach more people who need to awaken to these truths. Shall we go together? The prophet's journey between shadow and promise. Imagine Jerusalem, a sacred city, but enveloped in a cloud of fear and uncertainty. The year was dark, marked by the death of a king who had ruled with prosperity for more than 5 decades. Uzziah was gone, and with him, the sense of security. In the streets, panic was a constant murmur, visible in the eyes of every man, woman, and child. The air was thick with omens, whispers about Judah's vulnerability in the face of approaching threats. In this scenario of fragility, Isaiah emerges, a young man with an honored priestly lineage, but who felt a growing unease in his soul. He had grown up with stories of God's greatness, witnessing sacred rituals in the temple since childhood. But now, he saw his beloved Jerusalem losing its way. Corruption, idolatry, greed, all infiltrated the heart of the holy city. Religious leaders, who should have been examples, sought only their own gain. Isaiah was deeply troubled. In a small room near the temple, he meditated in silence. The wind outside howled, hitting the windows like an imminent warning. He felt that something big and terrible was about to happen, but he couldn't name what. His heart was a whirlwind of apprehension and anticipation. Suddenly, the door burst open with a bang, breaking the silence. Brother Isaiah, exclaimed Jeremiah, his closest friend. His voice choked. Have you heard the news? Our borders are under threat. The Assyrians are marching against us. They say that with Uzziah dead, we are easy prey. Isaiah took a deep breath before answering. And our people, Jeremiah, how are they reacting? Jeremiah lowered his head, disheartened. Some talk of forming alliances with nations that worship other gods. Isaiah's expression grew even darker. Jeremiah, our salvation is not in human alliances. We need to return to the God of our fathers. Jeremiah looked deep into Isaiah's eyes. But who will listen in times like these? Who will pay attention to your words? Isaiah remained silent for a moment, watching the horizon, where dark clouds began to form. Perhaps no one will listen to me now, but someone needs to speak. Someone needs to remind our people who the true king is. Jeremiah nodded, touched by his friend's unwavering conviction. Later, walking toward the temple, Isaiah saw men anxiously discussing in the streets, women crying for their children who might soon be called to war. An elderly priest approached, with a disheartened look. Young Isaiah, do you really believe that God still hears us? Look around you. God has abandoned us. Isaiah replied calmly, but firmly, God would never abandon us. We are the ones who have strayed from him. The old priest shook his head in disbelief and slowly walked away. The vision that broke the silence, the heavenly call. Upon entering the temple, a heavy, almost palpable silence hung in the air. Isaiah approached the altar, knelt slowly, and began to pray. God of our fathers, we are lost. Our nation is straying from your law. Our hope is fading. Where else can we look but to you? As he prayed, Isaiah felt a strong wind sweep through the temple, gently shaking the sacred veil. An indescribable presence began to fill the space, intense and overwhelming. A radiant light emerged from behind the veil, penetrating him with a brightness too great to bear. Isaiah's eyes filled with tears. His body trembled uncontrollably. "Oh, Lord," he cried in a trembling voice, "what am I seeing?" A voice resonated, deep and majestic. "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." Isaiah fell to the ground, unable to bear the force of the vision, feeling completely impure and unworthy. He cried out in despair, "I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." A celestial being flew quickly to the altar, taking a burning coal with tongs. Isaiah felt his heart race. The being approached calmly and mercifully, extending the coal towards the young priest's lips. "Fear not, Isaiah," said the celestial being with a soft but firm voice. "This coal has touched your lips. Your guilt has been removed. Your sin is forgiven." The pain Isaiah felt was deep, burning, but liberating. Then the divine voice echoed again throughout the temple. "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Isaiah slowly raised his head. Even knowing the trials he would face, he felt compelled to answer. With determination, he raised his voice. "Here am I, Lord. Send me." Little did he know that what he had seen in that temple would haunt him for the rest of his life. Isaiah remained kneeling on the cold floor of the temple, his heart racing, his mind in a complete whirlwind. His lips still burned from the touch of the heavenly coal. But now a new reality unfolded before his eyes, something far beyond any human comprehension. Everything around him seemed to vibrate. The floor, the walls, even the air itself pulsed with an indescribable force. A light so intense appeared before him that Isaiah had to cover his eyes with his hands, unable to bear the blinding glare. Through the gaps between his trembling fingers, he began to perceive extraordinary details. Before him, a majestic throne rose, high and exalted, radiating a pure and penetrating light. On the throne was a Lord, a vast and immeasurable figure, whose face could not be contemplated, such was his glory. Around the throne, celestial beings with 6 wings flew continuously. Isaiah watched, fascinated and terrified, as 2 wings covered their faces, 2 their feet, and with the other 2 they hovered in the air. A deep and powerful melody echoed throughout the temple, repeating incessantly, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." The voice of these beings resonated deeply in the prophet's soul, making every fiber of his body tremble. The entire temple seemed to shake under the intensity of that divine proclamation, as smoke began to fill the space, partially obscuring his vision. Overwhelmed by fear, Isaiah began to murmur to himself, "How can I be here? This is too much for any man to bear." With each repetition of the heavenly chant, his heart sank deeper into the painful awareness of his own impurity. It was not just fear. It was an overwhelming sense of shame before divine perfection. He bowed his head, a tear slowly rolling down his face and falling onto the temple floor. "I am ruined," he whispered, trembling under the weight of that terrible revelation. "I am unworthy of this. I do not deserve to witness such glory. I am a man of unclean lips, and live among a people of unclean lips." Isaiah pressed his hands against his chest, trying to relieve the suffocating weight that oppressed him. His breathing became difficult, his body weakening under the magnitude of the vision. "Why did you bring me here, Lord?" he groaned, feeling completely unable to bear so much holiness. As he remained kneeling, the voice echoing throughout the temple seemed to intensify even more. The young priest realized that the very foundations of the temple shook under the force of the celestial proclamation. Isaiah began to cry deeply, recognizing the gravity of his own condition before the perfect holiness that surrounded him. "There is no salvation for me here," he whispered in despair. "I am before the living God. No mortal can survive his presence." Suddenly, a shadow loomed over Isaiah, interrupting his desperate thoughts. He slowly raised his head and saw one of the seraphim approaching rapidly. His heart pounded and fear dominated him. Convinced that this moment would be his end, the celestial being held something in his hands. Isaiah tried to identify it, and his heart almost stopped when he realized what it was. A burning coal taken directly from the celestial altar. The intense glow of the coal seemed to illuminate the entire temple, casting dancing shadows on the smoke-filled walls. The celestial being approached, his penetrating eyes fixed on the trembling prophet. "No, Lord, I cannot bear this," Isaiah pleaded, trying in vain to recoil. The being landed gently before him, holding the incandescent coal firmly in one hand, his eyes radiating calm and security. "Isaiah," said the celestial being with a deep and comforting voice, "this coal will touch your lips to purify you. Fear not." Before Isaiah could react, he felt the burning heat of the coal touch his lips. The intense pain mingled with an indescribable sensation of relief and purification. He cried out, not from physical pain, but from the overwhelming shock. The celestial being smiled softly as he removed the coal from Isaiah's lips. "Your guilt has been removed. Your sin is forgiven." Still stunned by the intensity of the moment, Isaiah slowly lifted his eyes to the glorious throne before him. He felt incredibly light, as if an overwhelming burden had been completely lifted from his heart. Then a powerful, deep voice resonated again, this time with a clarity that could not be ignored. "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" The divine voice seemed to penetrate Isaiah's bones, filling him with supernatural conviction. Without thinking of the future consequences, Isaiah immediately answered, his voice firm and resolute. "Here am I, Lord. Send me." But even as he uttered these words, a shiver ran down his spine. Something within him clearly whispered that his life would never be the same. He had no idea of the pain, rejection, and trials that still awaited him. The mission begins, a voice that rises against the storm. Isaiah remained kneeling on the cold floor of the temple, his heart racing and his mind in a whirlwind. His lips still burned from the touch of celestial coal, but a new reality, which transcended any human comprehension, unfolded before him. Everything around him seemed to vibrate. The intense light that had blinded him now revealed extraordinary details. A majestic throne, high and exalted, and the Lord seated upon it in immeasurable glory. Celestial beings with 6 wings flew, crying out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." The voice of these beings resonated in Isaiah's soul, making every fiber of his body tremble. He felt the purification. He felt the removal of his guilt. And he heard the call, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" His answer came from the depths of his soul. "Here am I, Lord. Send me." The intense light began to dim, and Isaiah realized that the vision was coming to an end. But before he could even sigh with relief, a wave of profound anguish hit him. Something was still hidden, something he would have to carry for a long time. Just when he thought the experience was over, a new and terrifying image began to slowly form before his eyes. And when Isaiah thought he would die, something completely unexpected happened. The heat still burned on Isaiah's lips. The sensation of fire remained, pulsing intensely. It was a pain mixed with a strange sense of relief, as if, with each passing second, something impure was being ripped from within him. Isaiah remained kneeling, eyes closed, breathing heavily. His body trembled, his hands, resting on the cold floor of the temple, could barely support his weight. It was as if he was between life and death, between the human and the divine. A soft but firm voice broke the silence. "Rise, Isaiah." He opened his eyes with effort. Before him, still hovering in the air, was a seraph who had touched his lips. The light around him was less dazzling now, but the glory of the place remained undeniable. "Your guilt has been removed," the celestial being repeated. "Your sin has been forgiven." Isaiah, his voice choked, asked, "Why? Why me? I am nothing more than a fragile man, a sinner." The seraph merely smiled, as if the answer was too obvious to be spoken. Then the atmosphere began to vibrate once again. A more powerful, more majestic voice than any Isaiah had ever heard echoed to the walls of the temple. "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Isaiah felt his heart stop for a moment. The question seemed to float in the air, awaiting an answer, as if the universe itself awaited the decision of a single man. He looked around. as if searching for someone else who could take on such a responsibility. But the temple was empty, except for the celestial beings and the overwhelming presence of God. I am here. His voice came out weak at first, but then gained strength, as if a new vigor was rising from within him. Here am I, send me. The words left his lips before he could even reflect on the consequences. It was an impulse, a deep inner certainty, an answer that was not born of the mind but of the soul. For a brief moment, silence fell. Not even the seraphim sang. Only the sound of Isaiah's heavy breathing filled the air. Suddenly, the light around the throne grew brighter. It was as if heaven itself was responding to his acceptance. The celestial being before him approached once more, looking into his eyes with a gaze that held both compassion and solemnity. Then listen carefully, Isaiah, he said. The path you have chosen will not be easy. Your words will be like hammers breaking stones, but they will hit hearts of stone. You will speak to the people, but they will close their ears. You will prophesy, but they will not believe. Isaiah frowned, confused. Lord, how long will this last? How long will they not listen? The answer came like thunder reverberating through the temple walls. Until the cities are in ruins and without inhabitants. Until the houses are deserted and the fields desolate. Until the Lord drives the people far away and the land is left completely abandoned. Isaiah's blood ran cold. His hands began to tremble again. He felt that the mission was much greater, much heavier than he had ever imagined. The celestial being then gestured towards him. But Isaiah, even amidst the destruction, a remnant will remain. A stump, a holy seed will survive. Isaiah took a deep breath, trying to absorb everything. He felt small, powerless. Yet at the same time, a new fire began to burn in his chest. A fire that no rejection, no pain, and no future suffering could extinguish. Still kneeling, he closed his eyes for a moment, spiritually preparing himself for what was to come. When he opened his eyes again, the temple seemed to have returned to normal. There was no more smoke, no visible seraphim, no radiant light. But Isaiah knew that his life would never be the same. He slowly rose, looking at the altar with a mixture of reverence and awe. As he left the temple, the first rays of sunlight penetrated the clouds, as if the heavens whispered to him, "This is just the beginning." Isaiah took a few steps outside and, looking towards the city, saw people going about their routines, completely oblivious to the supernatural experience he had just had. Jeremiah, his friend, saw him from afar and ran to him. "Isaiah, where have you been? You're different." Isaiah, his eyes still shining with emotion, just smiled, took a deep breath, and replied, "Jeremiah, I believe God has given me a mission." Jeremiah stared at him, startled. "What kind of mission?" Isaiah looked at the horizon with a serious expression. "A mission that will hurt more than I can imagine," he replied without hesitation, not knowing how painful his mission would truly be. The prophecies that shock, Emmanuel and the Prince of Peace. Isaiah walked slowly through the streets of Jerusalem, feeling the weight of the mission he had just received. Every step seemed to carry the echo of the divine voice still resounding in his mind. Go and tell this people. But what God had said next had left the young prophet with a heavy heart. Jeremiah, Isaiah said, calling his friend as he approached a small square where some men were discussing politics and war, "I need to tell you something." Jeremiah quickly turned around. "You're still not normal, Isaiah. Since that morning in the temple, your eyes have changed. What happened?" Isaiah took a deep breath, as if searching for courage in the depths of his soul. "God called me." He hesitated for a moment. "But he also revealed to me that the people will not listen to me." "What do you mean?" Jeremiah asked, frowning. "God said that they will have ears, but not hear, eyes, but not see. Their hearts will harden." Jeremiah was silent for a few seconds, as if trying to process what he had just heard. "So you're saying that God is sending you to preach knowing that no one will listen?" "Exactly," Isaiah replied with a saddened look. "My mission is to proclaim Jeremiah, even if no one wants to listen." His friend ran a hand through his hair, confused. "That doesn't make sense, Isaiah. Why would God do that?" Isaiah sighed deeply. "Because even amidst rejection, there is a greater purpose. A remnant will be saved. A holy seed will remain. The two walked in silence to the market entrance. There, Isaiah saw a group of religious leaders, the same ones he had seen many times in the temple. Approaching cautiously, Isaiah raised his voice, "O people of Jerusalem, thus says the Lord, hear, indeed hear, but do not understand. See, indeed see, but do not perceive." Some men stopped to listen. Others simply shook their heads, laughing scornfully. Another prophet with words of condemnation. One of them muttered, "We don't need prophets. We need soldiers." Another shouted. Isaiah, with a fixed and determined gaze, continued, "Harden the heart of this people, O Lord. Close their ears, blind their eyes, until the cities are in ruins, until the fields are devastated." Silence fell over the square for a few seconds, but soon laughter and insults began again. "Go away, Isaiah," an elderly man shouted. "We don't need your threats." Jeremiah approached his friend, holding him by the arm. "Come, Isaiah, they are not ready to listen." As they walked away, Isaiah suddenly stopped and looked back. Something inside him said that this initial rejection was just the beginning of a long and painful path. That night, back in his small house, Isaiah knelt and prayed, "Lord, how long? How long will I preach and not be heard? How long will I see my people straying further and further from you?" The answer came as a deep whisper in his mind. "Until the land is devastated, until chaos covers the cities, until only a burnt stump remains. But from this stump, life will emerge again." Isaiah slowly opened his eyes, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. Days later, the news began to arrive. Enemy troops advancing, famine, injustice growing in the streets. The words Isaiah had prophesied began to come true before his very eyes. And yet, the people remained indifferent. One morning, passing through the market, Isaiah heard a group of women crying. "Another village destroyed," one of them lamented. Isaiah clenched his fists. "They need to hear. They need to understand," he murmured to himself. Jeremiah appeared from a corner. "Isaiah, will you continue?" "Until my last breath," he replied resolutely. Isaiah knew that his journey would be marked by pain, rejection, and loneliness. But something inside him said that God's purpose was greater than he could comprehend at that moment. But the greatest revelation of all was yet to come. The days in Jerusalem had grown more tense. Every morning brought bad news. Lost battles, failed political alliances, famine in nearby villages. Isaiah walked through the streets, observing the tired faces of his people. He knew that his mission was to proclaim, even if no one listened. But this did not diminish the weight in his heart. On a cloudy afternoon, Isaiah was summoned to the royal palace. King Ahaz, now on the throne, seemed insecure, hesitant, and overcome by fear. The threat of invasion from the kingdoms of Israel and Syria had caused the monarch to panic. Upon entering the throne room, Isaiah immediately felt the tension. Armed guards, murmuring counselors, pale faces full of worry. "Isaiah," the king called in despair, "what does your God say about all this? We are surrounded by enemies. My heart is consumed by fear." Isaiah took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, seeking strength. Then he approached the king. "Listen to me, O house of David. Do not fear the two smoldering stumps. These kings of Syria and Israel," he began with a firm voice. King Ahaz looked at him anxiously. "But how can I not be afraid? They are already at our gates." Isaiah remained impassive. "God will give you a sign, something that will prove that he is still in control." He paused briefly and looked directly into the king's eyes. "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." A heavy silence fell over the room. "What?" Ahaz asked, visibly confused. "A virgin conceiving? That's impossible." The counselors around began to murmur, exchanging doubtful glances. "That doesn't make sense," one whispered. "Isaiah, you speak in riddles," another said, irritated. Jeremiah, who had accompanied Isaiah to the palace, approached and whispered, "Isaiah, are you sure what you heard?" Isaiah nodded firmly. "Absolutely." As the men in the room questioned, laughed, and mocked the prophecy, Isaiah remained motionless. His gaze was fixed on something far beyond human comprehension. "Emmanuel, He repeated softly, almost like a prayer, as they left the palace. Jeremiah walked beside Isaiah, still stunned. A virgin? How? How can that happen? Isaiah stopped and turned to his friend. I don't know, Jeremiah. I don't understand how, but I know that's what God revealed, and I know that one day that child will be born. But the people, Jeremiah insisted, they barely believe what you already say. How could they accept something like this? Isaiah looked up at the sky, now covered with gray clouds. I don't understand everything either, my friend, but I know I need to speak. In the days that followed, news of the prophecies spread rapidly. Wherever he went, Isaiah heard comments. A child of a virgin? Madness, some said. Now the prophet has really gone crazy. Others mocked. There was laughter, sarcasm, even direct insults. One morning, walking toward the temple, Isaiah was approached by a group of young men. Hey, prophet, one of them shouted. When is your Emmanuel coming? We understand. You love metaphors, don't you? Isaiah stopped, looking at them calmly. Laugh today, mock now, but the words of the Lord do not fail. The group burst into laughter as they walked away. Back in his house, Isaiah knelt again, as so many times before. Lord, why you show me things that my mind cannot comprehend? Why do you make me proclaim such a mysterious sign? The silence of the night was his only answer. And then, as he sat there, with his eyes closed and his heart heavy, Isaiah had another brief vision. A woman bathed in light, her womb growing and a child in her arms. Emmanuel, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. The image disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Isaiah remained motionless, struggling to breathe. This defies all human logic, he whispered as the tears continued to fall. Isaiah realized that what had seemed defied all human logic. The weeks following the revelation sign of Emmanuel were even more challenging for Isaiah. Tension in Jerusalem grew like a storm about to break. Enemies surrounded the borders, and fear gripped everyone. Even so, Isaiah rose every morning with the same conviction to deliver the message of hope that God had entrusted to him. On a cold morning, Isaiah was in the city's central square. There, merchants set up their stalls and citizens discussed the latest military threats. Isaiah raised his voice with conviction. Hear me, people of Judah. Do not let fear consume you. The Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and he shall be called Emmanuel, God with us. Some people stopped to listen. Others simply walked on, shaking their heads in disapproval. From the crowd, a man shouted mockingly, Ah, the dreamer prophet returns with his messages of condemnation and impossible promises. Another man, with a bitter expression, added, Emmanuel, what kind of God allows so much suffering to fall upon us? Isaiah, unshakable, continued, Even amidst despair there is hope. This child will be a sign that God has not abandoned us. Even when there is silence, even when everything around us shouts defeat, God is with us. Jeremiah, always nearby, approached and whispered, Isaiah, don't you see that the more you speak, the more hatred you incite? They look at you with contempt. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly. I know, Jeremiah, but if God sent me to speak, I will speak. Even if no one believes, his word does not return empty. That night, in his small house, Isaiah gathered his family. With his wife and children around, he spoke with emotion in his voice. My children, I know that many laugh at me. They say I am crazy, but I want you to know that I believe every word the Lord has given me. One day, this child, this Emmanuel, will be born, and he will change everything. His wife, always silent, gently touched his hand. I believe in you, my love. Isaiah smiled, his eyes moist. Days later, a group of religious leaders sought Isaiah in the temple. Their faces were severe, almost hostile. Isaiah, said the eldest among them in an authoritative tone, we cannot allow you to continue spreading false hopes among the people. We are already suffering enough. These words are not mine, Isaiah replied firmly. They are from the Lord of hosts. If he sent me to proclaim hope, that is what I will do. The man snorted in anger. Then let your God protect you, because the people are tired of empty promises. As the leaders walked away, Isaiah remained alone in the temple, his eyes fixed on the altar. "Lord, I am tired. My heart aches, but I will not recoil." That night, Isaiah had a brief dream. In the dream, he saw a boy running among olive trees with a peaceful smile and a serenity that seemed to encompass everything. "Emmanuel," he whispered upon waking, his face wet with tears. But even in that image of hope, Isaiah felt that there was something greater, something still hidden from his understanding. The sign of the virgin was only the beginning, but it was just a sign. The greatest mystery remained hidden. The days dragged on, and Jerusalem remained submerged in uncertainty. Military threats increased, and famine began to invade the poorest homes. People walked through the streets with their heads down, their eyes dull, carrying the heavy burden of hopelessness. Isaiah, however, remained firm. Every morning, even before the sun rose, he would climb one of the hills near the city to pray. "Lord," he whispered, his eyes raised to the still dark sky, "your people are tired. We are on the verge of collapse. We need a word, a sign, a light." That morning, still kneeling, something extraordinary happened. Isaiah felt his body tremble. A new vision filled his mind. It was as if the heavens had opened before him. He saw a child, but not an ordinary child. There was a special glow around her, as if the very glory of God rested upon that small figure. A celestial voice echoed, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Isaiah opened his eyes, startled, his heart racing. "A Prince of Peace," he whispered, still trying to comprehend the meaning of what he had just seen. Without losing a moment, Isaiah ran down the hill and through the streets of Jerusalem. He found a small group gathered at the market entrance and, without hesitation, began to proclaim, "Hear, people of Judah, there is hope. The Lord has revealed to me that a child will be born. He will bring government justice and eternal peace. His name will be Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." People stopped, some curious, others skeptical. A middle-aged man dressed as a merchant crossed his arms and shouted, "Another child, Isaiah. Wasn't the story of Emmanuel enough? And now you come with another prophecy." A woman, holding her small child in her arms, asked hesitantly, Isaiah, when will this child be born? We are tired of waiting." Isaiah took a deep breath. "I don't know when, but I know that God keeps his promises." Jeremiah, always by his side, pulled him to a corner. "Isaiah, do you realize what you're doing? Every new word you speak seems to divide the people even more. Some are beginning to believe, but many others are turning against you." "I know, Jeremiah, but the message is not mine." Isaiah clenched his fist firmly. "I cannot remain silent." That night, lying in his small bed, Isaiah could barely sleep. The words of the vision echoed endlessly in his mind. "Prince of Peace, Mighty God, Everlasting Father." "Lord, how can a simple child bear such grand titles?" he asked in prayer. "Who will this son be? How will we recognize him?" The following days were even more difficult. Every time Isaiah stood up to speak in public, the tension increased. Some religious leaders began to spread rumors that he was going crazy. They claimed that his visions were merely the result of exhaustion and despair. One afternoon, Isaiah was walking to the temple corridors when he was approached by a group of priests. "Isaiah," said the eldest in an authoritative tone, "we want you to stop talking about these children. You are confusing the people." "Confusing?" Isaiah replied, his eyes full of determination. "I am proclaiming the truth. God is speaking." "Truth?" Another priest scoffed. "What kind of God promises salvation through a child? Where's the army? Where's the strength we need?" Isaiah took a deep breath. "It is not by armies nor by human strength," he replied. "God's answer will come in a way you do not expect." The priests walked away laughing, while Isaiah remained there, his eyes fixed on the altar, his heart heavy. That same night, while praying at home, Isaiah had another brief vision. He saw multitudes of people, not just Israelites, but people from many nations, speaking different languages and coming from different cultures, all walking toward a great light on the horizon. "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light," he whispered, repeating the words that formed in his mind. The next day, he returned to the central square and proclaimed, "The people who walked in darkness will see a great light. Those who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, on them the light of the Lord will shine." But, as before, many ignored him. Others laughed. Some, more enraged, began to throw stones at him. Isaiah dodged and, protected by Jeremiah, managed to escape to the narrow alleys of Jerusalem. Once safe at home, he fell to his knees. "Lord, how will all this happen? When? Where? Who will this child be? How will the people believe?" Once again, silence seemed to answer. A mixture of hope and confusion filled the prophet's heart. Isaiah knew he was in the midst of something far greater than he could comprehend, but the true meaning of it all was still hidden from his eyes. Isaiah still didn't fully understand how this would change everything. The pain of prophecy, the suffering servant, and the cross. The light of hope that Isaiah carried after the vision of the Prince of Peace began to diminish under the weight of the new messages that God entrusted to him. The words that now came to his heart were sharp, cutting like a two-edged sword. There were no more promises of immediate comfort. Now what God wanted him to proclaim was judgment. The next morning, Isaiah walked to the temple entrance with a pale face and sunken eyes, the result of countless nights spent crying in silence. "Jeremiah," he called his friend, his voice trembling. "Today, the words the Lord gave me are very heavy." Jeremiah looked at him with concern. "More judgment, Isaiah?" The prophet merely nodded, taking a deep breath before raising his voice to everyone passing on the temple steps. "O house of Israel, O Judah, thus says the Lord of hosts, woe to Syria, the rod of my anger. With her I will strike rebellious nations. And as for you, people of Jerusalem, your arrogance will be brought low. The proud will be humbled, and the land will be devastated." People stopped for a moment. A strange silence hung in the air, but murmurs soon followed. "He's finally lost his mind," one of the elders said. Always that voice of condemnation. "Where's the God of mercy our ancestors worshipped?" Another mocked. Isaiah descended the stairs, walking to the streets as he continued to proclaim, "Cities will be devastated. Trees will be cut down. Vineyards destroyed. The pride of Judah will be crushed. You trust in human alliances, in your armies. Know this. The day will come when your warriors will flee without looking back." Jeremiah walked beside him, his head bowed. "Isaiah, they won't listen. They don't want to listen." "I know," the prophet replied, his voice heavy, "but I cannot remain silent." That night, Isaiah barely slept. Kneeling on the cold floor in prayer, he cried out, "Lord, how long? How long must I proclaim judgment and destruction? How long will I see closed faces, deaf ears, and hardened hearts?" And, in response, another vision appeared before his tired eyes. He saw burned lands, houses reduced to dust, children crying in the streets, mothers lamenting, and priests with torn clothes sitting in the ashes. This is the price of disobedience," he murmured as tears streamed down his face. The next day, during a small meeting with a group of farmers, Isaiah tried to warn them. "Your fields will be taken, your harvest destroyed. The enemy will come like a swarm of locusts. Listen to the voice of the Lord while there is still time." One of the men stood up angrily. "Silence, prophet. Our problems are political, not spiritual. We don't want to hear your threats anymore." Isaiah remained firm. "You can silence me, but you cannot silence the voice of God." Jeremiah, once again, pulled him away, fearing that Isaiah would be stoned on the spot. As they walked through the narrow alleys, Isaiah suddenly stopped. His eyes were fixed on something only he could see. "Jeremiah, I love them. I love this people. But their hearts are so hardened," Isaiah said with a choked voice. "How can I bear to witness all this and not be able to stop it?" "You did everything you could," Jeremiah replied, placing his hand on his friend's shoulder. "All that's left now is to pray." Isaiah nodded, but the weight of the mission was almost unbearable. That night, in silence, he once again isolated himself in the temple, kneeling near the altar. "Lord, my heart is broken. The words you give me are heavy as stones. How long? How long?" A strong wind blew through the temple curtains. Isaiah felt a shiver run down his spine. God had shown him the consequences of disobedience. But the prophet felt that the suffering to come would not only be for the people. He himself would still face a pain he could not imagine. Isaiah wondered if he could bear more, not knowing that the greatest pain was yet to come. Weeks passed, and Isaiah's heart remained in constant conflict. The weight of the prophecies of judgment still consumed him. But amidst the pain, a new vision began to emerge during his morning prayers. It was a cold morning. The wind cut through the streets of Jerusalem as Isaiah, once again, climbed the hill where he often sought answers. He knelt on the dry ground, his hands raised to the sky. Lord, how long will I only see destruction? How long will you only show me judgment? As he prayed, his eyes closed, and then a new scene began to form before him. It was not a vision of war nor of ruin, but of a man of humble appearance, with a scarred face, his shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible burden. Isaiah squinted, trying to see more clearly. "Who is this?" he whispered as the vision became clearer. A soft but firm voice echoed in his mind. "Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring justice to the nations." Isaiah opened his eyes, breathing rapidly. Sweat ran down his forehead, despite the cold morning. "A servant," he murmured, slowly rising. "Who is this man?" That same day, walking to the narrow streets of the city, Isaiah saw familiar faces. Some looked at him with disdain, others with pity. He knew that his reputation among the people was increasingly damaged, but at that moment, none of that mattered. His mind was completely consumed by the image of the servant. Upon meeting Jeremiah again, Isaiah decided to share what he had seen. "Jeremiah, I had another vision." "Another one?" his friend asked with a worried look. "Yes, but this time it was different. It wasn't about war or judgment. It was about a man, a servant." Isaiah gasped. He saw the servant being pushed, dragged, beaten mercilessly. His face was swollen, covered in bruises. His eyes, barely open from so many blows, still conveyed love. How can he be like this?" Isaiah murmured, tears falling uncontrollably, and the voice continued, "Like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem." Isaiah fell to his knees, his entire body trembling. The pain he saw was so real, so intense, that it seemed to pierce his own flesh. Suddenly, the scene changed. Now the servant was being scourged. Isaiah saw his back torn, lacerated, bleeding with every lash. "No," the prophet cried. "This is too much. I can't take it." But the vision continued. The whips fell hard. The skin tore in strips. Blood flowed, mixing with the dust of the road. And yet the servant did not complain. He did not fight. He did not resist. Why? Why does he accept this? Isaiah murmured between sobs. And then, as if God himself answered, the sacred voice continued. "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted." Isaiah, overwhelmed, shook his head, trying to push away the image, but it remained unshakable, cruel, real. The vision continued. Now the servant was being led somewhere. Isaiah couldn't see exactly where, but he could hear the sounds of screams, mockery, and the distant crying of women. "But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities." The voice continued. Isaiah felt his strength abandon him. His legs gave way, and he collapsed completely to the ground. "Crushed," he whispered, "because of our guilt, our sins." The weight of the revelation was suffocating. Then the final scene of that vision hit him like a blow to the chest. The servant lying motionless, his body covered in wounds, eyes closed, lifeless. Isaiah covered his face with his hands and cried out in despair, "Lord, I can't take it anymore. Don't show me anymore. It's too much for me." The wind blew fiercely over the hill. Dry leaves swirled around the prostrate prophet. He remained there motionless, crying. Jeremiah, who had been looking for him since morning, finally found him. "Isaiah, what happened? Are you okay?" Isaiah raised his red, broken eyes, his voice weak, full of despair. "No, Jeremiah, I'm not. What I saw, what God showed me, I feel like I can't take it anymore." Jeremiah helped him up, but Isaiah knew that what he had just witnessed was just the beginning of a much greater suffering. He felt he couldn't bear more, not knowing that this was just the beginning. Beyond death, the revelation of the resurrection. Isaiah could barely get up from the ground after the vision of the wounded and humiliated servant. The images were still engraved in his mind with terrifying clarity. The words he had heard echoed like silent thunder in his heart. Even as he walked home, his legs felt like lead. Each step was dragged, as if the weight of all the pain he had witnessed rested on his shoulders. Jeremiah walked right behind, watching with deep concern. "Isaiah," he said softly, placing his hand on his shoulder. "Since that vision, you barely speak, barely sleep. What did you see?" Isaiah stopped, took a deep breath, and replied in a low voice, "Something that, Jeremiah, something I can't even explain. It's as if heaven itself had cried, as if the judgment I always proclaimed was not falling on the guilty, but on someone innocent." That night, Isaiah locked himself in his writing room. He picked up his scroll, his inkwell, and began to write, his hands trembling as he poured out what his soul could no longer contain. The words flowed like a river, painful and inevitable. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Isaiah paused. The tears fell unnoticed. The inkwell slipped from his hand, staining the parchment. He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. Wounded, he whispered, "But how?" He placed his hand over his heart, feeling it clench. The images returned forcefully, the servant now tied to something. Isaiah looked closer. Wood, outstretched arms, hands and feet pierced by something he had never seen before. What is this?" he whispered, struggling to understand. It was a form of execution that Isaiah had never known. No record of such a method existed in his time. It was something cruel, slow, prolonged suffering. The vision continued. The servant hung there, lifeless, his body covered in blood. People around him laughing, mocking, pointing fingers. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth, like a lamb led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that is silent before its shearers. So he did not open his mouth. The words came as if God himself whispered them in his heart. Isaiah dropped the pen and covered his face with both hands. "Why, Lord? Why does this man endure all this without complaining? Why does he defend himself?" He cried out in despair. He remembered the trials he had seen in Jerusalem, men screaming, fighting for their lives before judges. But the servant remained silent. How can someone be unjustly condemned and still accept it? The questions hammered in the prophet's mind. In another quick vision, Isaiah saw the servant's body being removed from that wooden structure. A man gently wrapped him in a cloth, carried him to a new tomb carved in a rock. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Isaiah murmured, shocked by the precision of the images. The tears returned, now heavier. "It makes no sense," he cried, standing up abruptly and knocking over scrolls and inkwells. "Why an innocent man? Why should someone so pure suffer like this?" Jeremiah, hearing the screams, ran to the room. "Isaiah, what's happening?" Isaiah, his eyes red and his cheeks stained with ink, replied through sobs. I saw every detail. The suffering, the aggressions, the nails, the humiliation, the death." Jeremiah remained silent for a moment, stunned. "But why?" he finally asked. Isaiah looked at his friend, his eyes full of pain and awe. "Jeremiah," he said, his voice low but firm, "it was not for his sins. It was for ours. All the guilt, all the pain that was ours was placed upon him." His friend recoiled as if trying to process those words. "But Isaiah," he stammered, "that's too cruel. No one would do that for a people who rejected him." Isaiah nodded slowly. "No one, except someone sent directly by God. Someone with a purpose far beyond our understanding." Silence filled the room. The two stood there motionless, immersed in the weight of that revelation. Isaiah picked up the scroll again and continued to write, even as his hand trembled, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. He knew that no matter how much pain these words carried, They needed to be written. These were words that would survive generations. However, as he immersed himself in the images of suffering, something new began to appear at the end of the vision, something Isaiah still couldn't fully comprehend. But it made him even more uneasy. He saw a light, something beyond death, a detail that should not exist, something that defied all the logic of what he had just witnessed. Isaiah stopped writing, took a deep breath, and whispered to himself with a stunned look, "This is impossible." Isaiah realized that he was not just describing suffering, but something unimaginable. Isaiah remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the scroll, his hand still trembling on the wooden table. The images of the servant's suffering, humiliation, and death were too vivid in his memory, as if he had been present in every moment, feeling every blow, every tear, every muffled groan. But now, something new, something that defied all human logic, began to take shape in his mind. As he tried to finish writing the last lines about the servant's death, a sudden light invaded his vision. It was not an ordinary light. It was intense, almost blinding. Isaiah closed his eyes instinctively. However, the scene unfolding before him remained clear, frighteningly clear. He saw the same servant, now alive. "No, this cannot be," he whispered. His voice choked. Isaiah opened his eyes wide, as if wanting to erase the vision. But when he closed them again, the image persisted. The servant, the one he had just seen beaten, pierced, dead, was now standing. His face was serene, his eyes full of life. The scars of suffering were still there, but something else had taken their place. Something Isaiah could not name, but that made him tremble. A soft voice, like a divine whisper, echoed within him. After he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. Isaiah felt the ground give way beneath his feet. Light? Satisfied? After so much suffering, he murmured, covering his face with his hands, trying to contain the storm of emotions. He stood up abruptly from the table and began to pace the room. "This is impossible," he repeated. "No one comes back from the dead. No one." The sound of the door opening interrupted his thoughts. Jeremiah entered, breathless. "Isaiah, rumors are spreading. People are gathering, demanding that you stop speaking. They say your words are disturbing everyone." Isaiah, his eyes fixed on the ground, replied in a low voice, "Jeremiah, what I just saw, even I can barely believe." "What?" Jeremiah approached. Isaiah took a deep breath, as if struggling to organize his thoughts. "I saw life after death. I saw the servant, the one who was crushed, pierced. I saw him standing, alive, as if death itself had been defeated." Jeremiah recoiled, startled. "Isaiah, that's impossible." "I know," the prophet replied, tears falling slowly. "But I saw it with these eyes." Isaiah walked to his table, picked up the scroll, and, with trembling hands, began to write once more. But the Lord was pleased to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. He paused for a moment, reflecting on every word he was writing. "Prolong his days," he repeated, trying to understand. Does that mean he will live even after being crushed? Jeremiah, still in shock, sat beside him. "Isaiah, do you realize what you're saying? You're writing that a man, a real man, will die and then live again." Isaiah nodded slowly. "That's exactly it and more." He looked at his friend, his eyes full of wonder. He will not only live again, he will see the reward of his suffering. He will witness the fruit of his sacrifice, as if death did not have the final say over him. Silence filled the room. The two stood there motionless, immersed in the weight of that revelation. Isaiah knew that revealing this to the people would bring even more mockery, more rejection, more pain. Who would believe in a resurrection? Who would accept such an outrageous prophecy? He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and, still kneeling, whispered a prayer. "Lord, I am on the verge of something that my mind cannot comprehend. I need understanding. I need your strength." At that moment, as the cold wind gently blew through the half-open window, Isaiah felt a new conviction begin to grow in his heart. Something great, something too revolutionary to comprehend alone, was being written through his hands. Isaiah knew he was on the verge of something too revolutionary to understand alone. The grand finale, the Messiah, the eternal hope. The days in Jerusalem remained heavy, as if the very air carried the weight of Isaiah's prophecies. Every message he announced seemed to strip away a little more of the people's hope. War, famine, judgment, suffering. Everything was unfolding exactly as he had declared. However, that morning, upon waking, Isaiah felt something different in his spirit. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he closed his eyes and prayed silently. Lord, after all I have seen, after all I have heard, is there still any hope? And at that instant, a new vision began to take shape. Isaiah saw fields flourishing where before there had only been dry land. He saw children playing in the streets without fear. He saw men and women joyfully rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. Laughter and songs echoed through the city. A soft voice, almost a whisper, filled the air. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has set me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn. Isaiah opened his eyes suddenly, his heart pounding. Hope, he whispered. Without losing time, he ran out of the house. He walked through the streets, crossed the city squares, until he reached the temple. There, with a firm and emotional voice, he began to proclaim, O Jerusalem, O people of Judah, hear! A time of restoration is coming. There will not always be ashes and mourning. There will be comfort for those who mourn. There will be freedom for the oppressed. People, accustomed to Isaiah's harsh messages, looked with astonishment. Some approached, curious. An elderly woman asked, Are you saying that after all there is still hope? Isaiah smiled, his eyes full of tears. Yes, he replied with conviction. After the darkest night, the sun rises again. God has not abandoned us. Jeremiah, always by his side, placed his hand on his friend's shoulder. This is the message you were waiting for, isn't it? Isaiah nodded. God showed me judgment, showed me suffering, but now he shows me redemption, a new beginning, a new chance for all of us. The following days were different. Isaiah was still rejected by some, but for the first time he saw attentive eyes, open hearts, people willing to hear about a better future. He began to record this new vision with special care, to bestow on those who mourn in Zion a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. As he wrote, tears streamed down his face. But this time they were not of pain. They were of hope. Jeremiah watched him from a distance and said to another friend, I've never seen Isaiah so determined, so full of life. However, even with all this renewed energy, something still troubled the prophet's heart. There was a detail, a piece of the puzzle that remained hidden. As much as he spoke of restoration and hope, Isaiah felt that the ultimate purpose, the deepest answer to all the visions, had not yet been fully revealed. That night, as the cold wind rustled the curtains of his house, Isaiah knelt once more alone. Lord, you showed me pain, judgment, redemption, but I feel there's more, much more. Something that unites everything, something that will give meaning to every word I wrote. He remained there for hours, waiting in silence. Fatigue overcame him, and Isaiah fell asleep right there on the floor. But in his dreams, a new light began to emerge on the horizon of his mind. Something grand, terrifying, and at the same time glorious. But the final revelation, the true answer to the question, why is the book of Isaiah the most surprising in the Bible, was yet to come. Isaiah woke up still on his knees, his face pressed against the stone floor. Dawn slowly invaded his small house, casting golden rays of light through the cracks in the window. His body ached, his knees were bruised, but there was a different peace, at the same time, a tension in the air he had never felt before. He slowly rose, washed his face, took a deep breath, and, with trembling hands, picked up a new scroll. Something in his spirit propelled him. The words came with an overwhelming urgency. Isaiah closed his eyes. The visions returned, but this time everything seemed to make sense. He saw the servant, saw the improbable birth of a virgin. He saw the child grow, full of wisdom, bringing comfort to the afflicted, healing to the sick, freedom to the oppressed. He also saw the scorn, the betrayal, the suffering, the death, and then life emerging where there had only been death. Isaiah opened his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "My God," he whispered, his voice choked. "Everything points to him. Everything I saw, every word I declared, is about a single man, a single Savior." Jeremiah ran to the room, calling him. "Isaiah, are you okay? You're pale." Isaiah looked at him with eyes shining, as if he saw beyond what human eyes could perceive. "Jeremiah, I understand now. I finally understand." "Understand what?" Jeremiah approached. Isaiah took a deep breath and replied with a mixture of emotion and awe in his voice. All the visions, every word of judgment, every promise of redemption, every image of suffering and glory, all point to Messiah, the servant, Emmanuel, the Prince of Peace. They are all him. One man, one plan, one Savior. Jeremiah was silent, stunned. "But Isaiah, how can it be? You're talking about things that will happen centuries from now. How can you be so sure?" Isaiah picked up the scroll and with a firm voice recited, "He will see the fruit of his soul's travail and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, because he will bear their iniquities." The prophet put down the pen, his eyes moist as he looked at his friend. "I am writing the gospel itself, even before it happens." Jeremiah sank into a seat, speechless. "This is unbelievable," he murmured. Isaiah continued, "Nations will see him. Kings will shut their mouths because of him. He will be exalted, lifted up, and greatly glorified. But before that, he will be rejected, pierced, crushed by us." Isaiah stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the horizon. "I don't understand all the details, Jeremiah, but I know one thing. One day, when this servant comes, he will fulfill everything God showed me. Every word, every tear, every promise." His friend, still in shock, asked in a low voice, "And the people, Isaiah, will they believe?" Isaiah smiled, his expression a mixture of pain and hope. "Some yes, others no. But when it all happens, when every prophecy is fulfilled, the whole world will know." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and, with his gaze fixed on the heavens, declared aloud, "For the Lord of hosts has spoken, and his word never fails." At that moment, a profound certainty filled Isaiah's heart. He had been chosen to record the greatest plan in human history, a plan that would only be fully understood centuries later, but that began right there, in every line, in every prophecy that flowed from his mouth. And now, upon finishing writing, Isaiah put down the pen, took a deep breath, and smiled with moist eyes. "The truth that will shock you. And now, my friend, do you understand why the book of Isaiah is the most astonishing in the Bible? The revelation can indeed shock you. When Isaiah finished his prophecies, he may not have fully comprehended the magnitude of what he was leaving for the world. He was just a man with his doubts, his fears, his tears, but also with a courage few possess. A man who chose to obey even when everyone around him rejected him. A man who, even without fully understanding, continued writing, continued speaking, continued prophesying. Today, when we look at the pages of the book of Isaiah, we don't see mere ancient texts or poetic words. We see a prophetic map, a timeline that spans centuries, pointing directly to the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Every detail described, from the virgin birth to the brutal suffering, from rejection to resurrection, was fulfilled with precision that defies all human logic. And what about the prophecies yet to be fulfilled? Isaiah also spoke of the second coming, of the glorious return, of a kingdom of eternal peace, where there will be no more death, no sorrow, no crying, no pain, as we can read in one of his chapters, in its most comforting verses. Isaiah's words are an invitation, a call for you to choose to trust, just as he did, even in the face of rejection, to proclaim hope even in times of crisis, to believe in God's promises even when everything around you shouts the opposite. If Isaiah, centuries before Christ, could see so clearly what we would only come to understand much later, imagine what God can still reveal to you today. And so, the question that echoes in our time is simple yet powerful. What about you? Are you ready to live with the same faith and courage as Isaiah? Are you ready to believe that, just as every word of that time was fulfilled, God's promises for your life will also come true? The book of Isaiah is not just history. It is a living testimony that God speaks. And when he speaks, nothing can prevent his word from being fulfilled. Rise up, believe, proclaim, because the same God who called Isaiah is calling you today. If you felt connected to this story and realized the depth of Isaiah's message, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is essential so we can continue unraveling these inspiring truths and sharing them with more hearts. May God speak to you, just as he spoke to Isaiah, in life's most unexpected moments. To complement your journey, here on the screen you will see two other equally inspiring biblical stories. Click and continue your discovery.